What keeps you up at night?
Inequality.
Okay.
You see it very much within the inner city. You find that a lot of people move into Johannesburg because they're looking for a job or looking for a way in terms of making a living.
Yeah.
They come from different provinces. But what has been quite revealing is that there are people who move from townships such as Soweto, such as the East Rand, such as the Vaal. They move into the inner city and they stay in some of these dilapidated buildings. Why? Because, and these people are employed, let me say that, and they move in with their families because it's very difficult for them. They're very far from work.
To commute, yeah.
They spend quite a lot of money on commuting with their kids, with their wife, with husbands, etc. Therefore, it makes sense for them financially to move in the inner city and stay there. And therefore, that also leads to them not having quite a lot of choices in terms of the kind of buildings they stay in. And that is because of inequality. And for me, that's one of the things that, I think as a country, we need to focus on our attention on. And,
Housing.
because, we need to really focus on. Because for me, if we don't solve that problem in terms of making sure that we really take care of our people, then we really are going to struggle as a country, because that leads to many other things in terms of crime, in terms of
social ills.
Exactly.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Off the Clock.
How do you deal with stress? How do you handle that?
Coping mechanisms that I have is I go for a run.
Manage stress by obviously being moments like this. Spiritly saying I'm going off the clock.
Just even a night out.
I'm listening to my favorite music. I go into one of the studios at the gym and I dance.
Some cocktails and rest and just do nothing.
I ground myself spiritually.
The right amount of stress is good.
Thank you for making the time. To the listeners, please like, subscribe as usual. Off the Clock is not about us, me and my son here. It's about the guest. We really, really want to know you as we go on and quiz you. I think your story is very powerful. Josie, my Josie, as somebody who's in the driving seat, taking it to another level. And I'm sure you won't hide any secrets, any plans that you have. In Off the Clock style, what we like to do is give our guests an opportunity to introduce themselves the way they like, because we'll never know how to give you that grand entrance to the show. Over to you.
Yeah, that is always a tricky question to introduce yourself, because I guess as people, we've got so many facets. But Innocent Mabusela, born and raised in Johannesburg, Soweto, Motebeli.
Okay.
My ancestral home is in Mukopane, Mosesechane. So that's where the family is from, and but most of them now are in Pretoria, Mamelodi. So that's where my paternal family is.
Okay.
And my father, an accountant, a mother, a social worker, and so you can imagine it was quite a polarized sort of, dealing with an accountant and a social worker.
Yeah.
But I think, like any other young person growing up in a township vibrant like Soweto, I had a good upbringing.
What about Soweto?
Orlando West.
Oh, Orlando West.
Soweto, yes. Just around the famous Vilakazi Street. So that's where I grew up. So Catholic, born and raised by grandmother, and but obviously, as you grow up, there's a point where you stop going to church. But when you become a parent and an adult, you go back there. So and I'm married to Zandile. We married in 90. My gosh, then the date disappeared.
Ooh, you're in trouble, my man.
Yeah, no.
You don't know.
In 2000. No. Don't edit it. In 2001, we got married, and we've got 3 children, and obviously two of them now are adults. Khotatso, who's 26, and Koketso, who's 23. And then we've got a daughter, Kutlwano, who's 15. So
Okay, nicely
and,
spaced.
and she's the princess and the boss of the house.
Okay, so
Yeah. So and yeah.
so let me just ease in there, Innocent. I think just to warm you up to more serious questions. How did you meet your wife?
No. It was adversity.
It wasn't arranged.
It was there's a friend of mine who thinks he arranged it. But that's and unfortunately he passed away. But he thinks he arranged it. But I met my wife at varsity. I was studying at the University of Durban, Westville, and she was there at the bus stop waiting for the bus, and I saw her.
Was it love at first sight?
And it's incredible, that feeling when there are a lot of people around you and you see this one person, and
Okay.
it just hits you.
So it was love at first sight.
It just hits you. But the funny story with my wife is that we both went to the same high school.
But you didn't know each other?
Holy Cross in Deep Kloof Zone 2.
Okay.
We went there, and she was a standard behind me.
Okay.
And the funny part about it is that she was in the same class with my friends, with my close friends who we grew up with. But I've never seen her and I've never met her. And another thing that is funny is that a friend of mine went out with her friend, but I'd never met her. We only met when we got to
university. Yeah.
So it's quite strange. Same school, same yard, same friends, same proximity, but I never met her. And it was funny because when we started talking, and when I brought her to my friends, it was like, so that was fantastic. That was great. But yeah.
So you're saying when you saw her, she just hit you. Is she still hitting you today?
What you mean hitting me?
Like, your way, it's not my way. It's like, I think what you wanted to say was, you just got attracted and she pulled, you know.
And it's I think with me, my personal experience with my marriage and my relationship with my wife is that, when you're starting up as individuals.
Yeah.
And you get married.
Get a partner.
And all of us, we have a concept of how our marriage should be. I've got my own, she's got her own. And it's when you start getting together that you realize that, sometimes there's things that you need to start thinking about as a family and as a collective. And that is where, the conversation about where you're going, how you're going to get there start becoming important. And they're not simple discussions. But, the great thing about it is that as we grew up together and our relationship matured, it's been great because, for me, I think we went through that cycle of knowing each other, being together, growing up together, raising a family, and going through those challenges and working through them together. And I think for me, that has been priceless. It's like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
There's people who go on a roller coaster ride and then they get to the bottom and they say, I'm not going to do this again. There's people who go in there, when they get to the bottom, they say, I want to go back again. And I want to go back again. That's how I feel because it's really been a rewarding personal experience for me.
So, you're very business-like, the way you explain things, very, less details, high level. One roller coaster that you went through. There are many.
Yeah, a roller coaster, one of them would be how you raise kids, for example. And as individuals, we have different styles. My wife is very,
methodical,
and Sije, let me tell you what you've done, etc., and that's how she is. Okay. At the same time, I'm the kind of person, and sometimes when something happens, I before I go and speak to the kids or whatever, I need to think about it first. And then she'll say, no, let's go do it now. you know, and I want to go think about it and come. And sometimes those things causes friction because then there's things like, well, when now you don't want to speak to the kids, you know, but I'm saying, no, but you know what, I will do it. But, you know, and especially when they grow up. And you know, the interesting thing about it is that because I was thinking exactly about that whole approach is that sometimes it's about how you grew up.
Yeah, the values.
And not necessarily the values, but also how the environment that you grew up in terms of, you know, the relationship between your mother and your father and how they brought you up. And because I had a very antagonistic relationship with my dad because he was strict. And I was
and
a very...
You're rebelling.
Not necessarily rebelling, but I was a very busy young man and a kid.
What does that mean?
No, in terms of, you know, I was out there. I mean, simple things like, you know, you need to come back at this time. You need to do this, you know. Sometimes, you know, you can't hold to those promises. And that's where, you know, we used to bump heads with my dad. And I found that because of those kind of approach where people are hard and people are pushing in terms of how they engage with me, I didn't want to do the same with my kids because I knew how it felt when that happened to me.
Okay, you wanted to do better.
Exactly, and therefore sometimes you allow that room to say, I'm going to be different when I'm dealing with my kids. I'm not going to be overzealous and I'm not going to be pushy. You know, I'm going to use, you know, think about things, sit down with them and talk to them. So those are the kind of things that, you know, I
gave
think,
you some roller coasters.
You grow up with. But obviously, I think that there's always a middle ground, and coming back to the marriage issue, because, you know, then, you know, once my wife understands how I operate and once I understand how she operates, it's a matter of us, you know, even agreeing before we go speak to our kids in terms of how we're going to handle it. And I think I find that, you know, sometimes much easier in terms of dealing with issues, rather than, you know, when we're sitting there and then we start shouting at the children without us agreeing in terms of how we're going to approach it. Because you don't want to be in a situation where you're sitting with your kids and now you're talking to them, but you differ in terms of the view that you're trying to portray.
So you feel like you had a strategy to raise your kids, or you're just learning as you go?
Learning as we go. I mean, to be honest, you know, because another thing is that kids are different. You know, you
telling me.
Yeah, you move from one kid to the next, and they're different in approach. And I don't think there is a framework, if you wish, that says this is how you bring up your kids. And I think because they are human, you need to respond to the type of person they are. Otherwise, you struggle. So yeah.
Okay, customize yourself and approach that. And I think, I mean, it's in all marriages, all situations. I mean, he can tell you how far different I am to his mother, but we're successful in raising them. Look at them, you know, at the end of the day. And they're completely different children in terms of the personality and the behavior and the way they approach life. And I agree with you that it requires that customization to each one of them and patience, you know, to get the best out of them.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree 100%. And I think for me, that's the value of parenting in terms of having people who are different doing it together. Because if you guys were the same, you know, it would be very difficult in terms of how you raise your kids, because you'll be using the same method in terms of raising them. Either you're strict or you're not strict. And sometimes you need that balance.
Yeah.
So I think for me, it's not a bad thing, actually, for us as human beings to be different in terms of how we're approaching things and how we're dealing with our children. Even in relationship, you know, the difference between you and your wife. I mean, I think it's good. And that's why they say opposite attract.
Yeah. Sugar and shambok for the kids.
That's the note. That's the note for myself.
Just transitioning to your role, your job. I mean, you know, from outside, it looks so powerful, so attractive to have a project to, you know, bring back Josie my Josie. And I'm sure you understand, I mean, the legacy that you can build and the weight that is sitting on your shoulders to turn that around. And I mean, in that, what are the toughest decisions, one or two, in the last year that you've made about that journey of rebuilding Josie, making it better, and thinking it? I mean, start thinking, bigger than one city.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I think on a daily basis, we deal with quite a lot of decisions. I think one of the interesting decisions is that we as Josie Majosi, the one thing that we agreed on from the onset was that we are going to be an apolitical organization, and we our mandate is to work with anybody and everybody who has the best interest of Johannesburg at heart. And whether it is the ANC, EFF, DA, or a Christian movement and whatever, we deal with those people. And it's been quite interesting is that, going into the G20 environment and stuff like that, and obviously this year being a political year, we've had quite a lot of political parties who've been interested in speaking to us as Josie Majosi. And I guess, sometimes you think about, well, is this wrong or right for us to do that? But then we had to go back to the fact that as an organization, we are not political.
So do you want to share some examples of typical approaches that political parties are making to you, requests, things, ideas?
No, it's not particularly about things that they are requesting, but it's about them coming to us and saying, you guys are operating in the inner city. You're doing great work in terms of revitalization. Can we come and meet you and see what you're doing? And how can we work with you? So that's the narrative usually. It's not about honing in on a particular project. But the challenge is that most of the time when those things come, it's about, okay, if we start meeting with political parties, what does that mean? And if we're meeting with this one and with other one, how does it actually show up as Josie Majosi? But then the decision to make is that no, it is the right thing to do. As long as we are having the right conversations that are right for the city of Johannesburg and particularly the community of Johannesburg, then there's no problem.
So you think that was the big inflection point, big decision?
Yeah, well, that's the first one. Because as I said, I mean, as an organization, sometimes you don't want to then enter into politics. And what you want to do is make sure that we stick to our mandate. So that's one. But I think the other big decision that we sort of as an organization, we sort of thought of and made was, the work that we're doing is growing, and with that comes requirements for funding and to run the organization. And what we've been thinking about is how we then make sure in terms of our sustainability going forward that we are able to maintain that as an organization. And one of the things we've decided is that we need to then establish ourselves as an NPC that does work on the ground, but we need to start thinking about how do we generate finances for ourselves,
make your own money,
in terms of making sure that that money can be brought back and help us in terms of implementing our projects. And that's a good thing because we are very cognizant of the fact that we have partners, they are supporting us, but at the same time, we need to make sure that as an organization, we become sustainable.
So, with all of that, you guys also work closely with governments in a way, even though you also explain you're not government, you apolitical and all that. So I wanted to know, where does that relationship that like you guys have to have with government, where does it work? And then in which areas does it like work where you see it's fruitful and things are moving? And then in which areas do you see it break down where it's like it's not working?
Well, I mean, so the way we work with government, and this is generally with all our partners, we have a memorandum of understanding with them that really guides the relationship. So we had an MOU with the city of Johannesburg for the past 2 years. Last October, we signed another one for 3 years. So we've extended the 2 years to the 3 years. And as part of that, we have agreed that we'll have a monthly, what we call a technical task team that meets on a monthly basis. And what that does is that whenever we have projects or they have projects that we're working together, we sit together and go through those projects and actually, make sure that we can drive for delivery. Where there are bottlenecks, we then work together to solve. So that framework works very well for us because that technical task team involve government departments and government agencies. So all of them come together and then we come together and we do that. One of the biggest challenge that we have in terms of the relationship of working with government is the turnaround of decision making. That for us is sometimes is a challenge. And why it's a challenge? Because it really slowed down the rate at which we can implement projects.
Okay.
Because for us, it's quite important that, when we do a project plan and we put together a budget and we speak to our partners and they provide funding for us. Because we make a commitment to our partners that this is a project that we'll be doing, this is for how long we'll be doing it. And when that actually slows down, it becomes an issue actually. And so that is one of the things that really we're trying to work out with government. But having said that, it does not mean that all of the projects actually they are slow. Most of where we get challenges are on the infrastructure projects, which we need to do. For an example, within the inner city, there's these uh, 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 roads that go in and out of the inner city, the main ones, such as Smith Street, Jan Smart's, Selby, and what we've realized is that those areas, most of them, you have to go under a bridge to go into the inner city, and we're working in terms of changing them. We've started working, for example, on the Nelson Mandela Bridge, and we also now last year worked on the Queen Elizabeth Bridge in terms of fixing them. But to work on that infrastructure, you really need government to sign off in terms of you fixing that infrastructure. And that is where we find that most of the time, sometimes things can get a bit slow in terms of getting the right government approvals and to meet the project. So that's an area in terms of, for us, which is sometimes that we feel that we can improve on.
Okay. So what have you seen works the best in terms of like getting their feet moving, in terms of like signing those papers or getting the approvals that you need from them? Or you still figuring that out to this day?
No, look, I mean, to be honest, the simpler way to do it is diplomacy. Um, One of the things that you will know in these sort of environments is that when you're dealing with such an environment and you escalate things to their bosses and stuff like that, you'll end up not getting anything done and any movements. So what we have done, I think the first thing is that we have good relationships with those people we work with. And I think it's important to note that within government, there are really good government officials. I think the narrative sometimes that we find is that, government officials, all of them don't want to do work. That's not what we find. Yes, there are areas where there are challenges from a people perspective, but there are government officials that are really willing to work. So the second thing that you need to understand is knowing who to speak to get things done. And once we have identified those people within those certain departments and agencies, you are able actually to progress work. One of the things with relationships is there's nothing wrong with a person saying no to you. The important part is understanding why they say no. And if you got good relationships with those people, then you understanding why some of the things are not moving and how to fix them correctly. Because if you don't understand that, it becomes difficult because you become frustrated and you solve for the wrong problem. So yes, so we are quite patient and we keep on engaging, we keep on looking for the right people. And yes, we've got relationship until the top office of the city with regards to the city manager. But yeah, we make sure that we don't spoil those relationships by actually, not utilizing them correctly by, going behind people's back and reporting them to their bosses because that in itself doesn't work.
So, I mean, just judging from what you're saying, it looks like to a larger extent you were going to give and take metrics when you engage in those buy-in from government to fix things, to make things better. How much leverage, do you put in those? What's in this for me? Type of a thing.
No, actually, you know what is quite interesting. I mean, for us, it's not about the give and take because the project that we come up with are based on the city's revitalization program. And what we do is that we sit with them, identify areas where there are gaps, and we then come in and say, this is the role we can do to fix that.
No,
So,
no, I see that. Let me interrupt you there a little bit. I see that. What I'm saying is, you find that two organizations, the city, the government, and Josie my Josie, you got your own priorities. They got theirs. So, you come up with your own ideas to fix, as you say, most of the roads that are coming in or going out are going under the bridges, and you want to deal with that. It may be a priority number 10 for them and priority number 1 or 2 for you. That's where I'm talking about, the alignment and the give and take part of it.
no, that's exactly what I'm answering. So we don't just think about these projects and bring them. Remember that we've got an MOU with the city. We've got a technical task team with the city. That's where the conversation
Okay,
happens.
all right.
So that's where we understand from a revitalization strategy of the city, these are the priorities areas.
Hotspots,
And they talk to us about, no, this is what we are doing here. I mean, if you're using a simple example, one of the things that we have been driving with them is this whole program around adopted traffic light within the inner city, where we are now bringing corporates to say that traffic lights around their precincts don't work because of load shedding and because the copper cables have been taken. But then what we do then, we then go to our corporate partners because they've got alternate power for them to power those traffic lights. And they do that. So what we're doing that we're helping the Johannesburg road agencies to make sure that they can fix those traffic lights working with us. So it's not like this is priority number 10 for them and this is priority number 1 for them. And that is why that relationship is so important, that whatever we do, we sit down, we discuss it, we get signed it off. I think the example of the slow decision-making process in terms of the sign-off, that's a different thing. Because once we have agreed on a project, remember, with government, there's something that they call a way leave. You need to get a way leave to work on government infrastructure. And you make an application for you to do that. And that, what I'm saying, takes time to go through the loop. So the debate is not about whether this project is priority for them or priority for us. It's us supporting them in terms of what they are doing and then making sure that we can get sign off and implement it together.
Living with the bureaucracy, the slowness of getting the paperwork and approvals.
So, a question I wanted to ask after you mentioned the way leaves is that what are the non-obvious barriers or hurdles that you guys have to contend with that people outside your ecosystem won't see? So I wanted to ask, is the way leaves like one of those things that hold you guys back? Also, like the question I asked before, it's like with the government, where there's the relationship break that stops work from happening. I'm guessing that's also one of them.
It's quite interesting because, sometimes when we think about these things, we think about government being a stumbling block. And sometimes it's not government, actually. It's communities. And so to give you an example, last year with the G20, there was an initiative that we worked on with the city to look at the various areas in the inner city where we did cleanups and fixed and did landscaping and all of that. And one of the biggest hurdles that we had there were local business community members in that area. Moving from the city going into Eastgate, that route. So that was a community thing. So it's not necessarily a government thing. So there are those things, and sometimes the second one is that sometimes we work on these initiatives, we implement them, but sadly, so community members come and then they destroy the infrastructure. For example, if you look at, a place such as, the Nelson Mandela Bridge, we would go in there, clean it, remove graffiti, paint it, fix the I don't know if you've seen it, but on the side panels there, it's got glass actually all the way. And we fixed that working with APSA and PG Glass and to make it. And then we will come back in a week, and then there'll be graffiti all over, and the glasses will be broken. So our work is dynamic in that way. It's that sometimes, as I said, yes, we can have delays with whaleys, but that is not our only hurdle when we're implementing this thing. And as I said, and just to repeat, it's not that all of the projects that we do there is delay in whaleys. But secondly, it's about once the project has been done and implemented, we need the community that stay within the inner city of Johannesburg and those people who are coming here to help us in terms of maintaining that infrastructure. But what we tend to find is that sometimes that infrastructure gets destroyed by the people who needs to benefit. So the one realization for us, and something which is now critical, is that we've always been saying that whatever we do as Josie Majosi, we need to involve the communities.
The buy-in.
Yeah, and sometimes it works very well. Sometimes it's a bit challenging to do, and where it works, you find that once we have actually fix up a place and developed it effectively, the communities actually take charge in terms of maintaining and keeping it like that.
Okay, I mean, thanks for addressing that, because often what we see is, the mayor or MEC with Innocent cutting ribbons, kissing babies, signing, saying they're going to do this project and all that. Boom, we don't hear a lot about it. It's going through all that process that you explain, which you have to get it signed off, before you put the pig on the ground. And I think it's important to have that inside scoop to understand how, these processes work. My follow-up question is, I mean, it looks like you work from a bigger menu card, right? I mean, the city is broken, like broken in pieces. So how do you prioritize projects? I mean, I know you mentioned earlier that you kind of, you don't work alone, you brainstorm and look at with government what are priorities and get private sector stakeholders to fund, to help. But how do you, prioritize out of, 100 pieces that are falling apart? Because I remember the last time I went to Joburg, I mean, everything was wrong in my eyes, before and after. I remember I grew up going to Joburg. It was this perfect city, and now it's like ghetto.
Well, how do you solve a puzzle? You have to start somewhere. And it's this concept about, that whole story about the starfish. One at a time, one at a time. And for us, that is our approach. And as I've mentioned to you before, the work that we do is not something that we woke up and, thumbs up. It has went through a process of us engaging with communities in the inner city, engaging with government, engaging with the private sector, engaging with institutions of higher learning, VETS, UJ, and Maharishi Invincibility Institute, in terms of understanding what needs to be done. Whatever we're doing, it is based on making sure that we look at what needs to do. And with that, we've got 7 work streams that we're doing.
Okay.
Our foundation pillar is the one around safety, security, and the environment. Because we need to make sure that Johannesburg is safe. We need to make sure that Johannesburg is clean. So for us, that is the first area. The second one is on education. For us as Josie Majosi, we believe that education is a pillar for everything in this country. And we cannot actually, fix Johannesburg without actually addressing challenges in education. There are a lot of schools in the inner city buildings currently. And those schools are struggling with regards to resources and infrastructure. And we are working with them to support.
And some of them are fly-by-night schools. They're not legit.
Yeah, exactly. And then we've got social development. Social development, we believe that, fixing a city is not only about infrastructure, but it's actually about addressing those social issues on the ground. Drugs, alcohol, homelessness, that is there. We need to deal with it. So social for us is quite important. And then we've got arts and culture. And one of the great things about arts and culture and tourism is what we call the creative economy. That for us is important. And the reason why it's important is because we've realized the amount of young people who are within the inner city, who are in the creative industry. You talk about fine arts, you talk about music, you talk about fashion. We find them in the inner city, and we think that there is an economy of young people in there. And then ultimately, we've got sports, and then obviously the other one is around commerce. Commerce is focusing on how do we really work with those businesses that are within the inner city to stay in the inner city, but secondly, attract new businesses into the inner city. So for us, that is important. And one of the things that we do actually is with all the projects that we are implementing, what is the business opportunity with it? Now, let me give you an example. So we are installing solar street lights across the inner city. And because our lights in the inner city don't work for various reasons. So now we have decided to install these solar street lights. Now, currently we're importing these lights. And one of the things that we've been thinking about and going to implement is that actually we can actually import them as components, not as a whole light. And what we can do actually, we can get young people who can actually establish an enterprise where they can do assembly of these lights and then we can install them. But that's not where it ends. The other opportunity is that when these lights are up, they need to be maintained. So you can actually establish another.
I was actually about to, as a next question, about to ask you a question about what are the three braggables or achievements that you can share with us so far, because I'm sure you're tracking the work that you're doing, and this is the one, right? If you can get a solar light in the city that works independent of uh, power or ESCOM or whoever, what are the other things that you brag about that helps you sleep at night?
We don't talk about bragging. We talk about story doing.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and
your language.
But this is important because I think and when you said it earlier, actually, it just popped into my mind because you're talking about sometimes you see us there with the mayor and cutting the ribbon,
kissing the babies.
Yeah, kissing the babies. The one thing that we do as Josie Majosi, we don't talk about projects before we implement them because we have realized. Through community engagement, that people are just fed up when you come to them and say, well, this is what we are going to do. They've heard it before. And people are not interested in those conversations. So because people have come to them and say, this is what we are going to do, and it never happens. Therefore, what we tend to do as Josie Machos is once we've conceptualized these projects, we go there and implement them. Once we have implemented them, then we talk about them. And in terms of their sustainability. So yes, the solar street lights are one initiative that we're driving. And so far we have put up around 2,200 solar street lights within the inner city of Johannesburg. In our sort of thinking, most probably if we want to cover the inner city, we need about between 7,000 and 8,000 lights in the inner city. So that's where we're striving for. But what we've also done with that is that we're also looking into Soweto in terms of how to do it. Right now, we are talking with government with regards to Petimgata that is moving as a corridor from the inner city into Soweto. And that project is working very well. The second story doing from our side is about the gateways. These are the main entry points, as we are saying. We call those gateways. The reason why gateways for us are so important is because that is the access into the city. So can you imagine right now, some of these areas, when you go through them, they are dirty. There's homeless people living under them. Some of them, if you look at the abutments, actually, they've taken off the paving. They've started digging into the bridges themselves.
Yeah.
And we want to change that. We want to really make them bright. We want to put lights there. We want to put proper landscaping and what we call placemaking, which is like art under those bridges, so that when people come in, they can see that there is a change. Because that is the point about all of this. People need to start seeing and recognizing that there is a change. So the work that we're doing around the gateways for us is important. We've dealt with the Nelson Mandela Bridge, and now last year we've done the Queen Elizabeth Bridge in the inner city, and working with APSA on the Nelson Mandela, and then working with FNB on the Queen Elizabeth. So those for us are quite a key project. We got 4 now that we're targeting for this year that we will be driving in terms of fixing those gateways. So that is the second initiative that we have that we're driving for.
Okay, third.
The third one is about establishing digital learning centers in the inner city. I spoke earlier on with regards to the resources of the schools that are within the inner city that they're struggling with.
Yeah.
And also what we find is that because of the resource challenges, the learners that go there don't have the same opportunities as children in other schools that are well preserved. So what we've started doing actually is to establish digital learning centers where actually young learners can start learning about coding and robotics in terms of the work that we do. And also, we are also dealing with, in partnership with Lego, in terms of the tinkering labs. So that for us is quite important.
But I mean, have you done this, or is still aspirational?
No, we've done it. And
Okay.
actually we're doing now the second one now, and we're going to be rolling them out across the city and into our schools in the township. And talking about technology, the second one is that, in Soweto, at the Pefeni Secondary School, we actually worked with Microsoft with regards to establishing a computer lab there. And it was fantastic because, and how it happened, and this is the whole concept about being a super connector, is that we took a number of our companies to various projects during Mandela Day. And one of the schools we focus on was the Pefeni Secondary School. And we went there just to clean and, remove graffiti, help them with their gardening, etc. But when we were there, one of the companies that was there was Microsoft. And we started engaging with the school principal around, infrastructure, what the challenges are. And one of the key areas was of need from their side was this computer lab. And then Microsoft came up actually and raised their hand and actually said, we will come on. And early this year, we launched that the computer lab. And therefore now what we're looking at is how then we grow those initiatives in terms of what we're doing.
The digital learning centers, that's correct. What I wanted to ask, because that obviously that has to do with education, and you spoke about how you helped a school with building a computer lab and all those things. I wanted to know, like with these digital learning centers, are they just that, or is it also like a library as well and all that? Because what I've seen in like other countries and all that is that something that really helps the community is having a very up-to-date and very modern library where it's not, you don't go there just to take books and all that. I mean, that's also part of it, but like they have access to the internet, computers, and all these things, and also maybe people that can teach them how to do certain things like coding and all those things. I wanted to know, is there more of a need for such things, like a more like what I've just described, a modern day library where like kids can just go there, they have access to the internet, books, whatever they need in like the modern day. And like also places like that will also help keep kids like off the streets and all those things. So I just wanted to know, has that been like a big uptick in like what you are trying to develop within the city as well?
Yeah. The thing about schools is that they've got quite a lot of challenges. And they start from infrastructure into teacher development, into making sure that they've got the proper resources in terms of things that we're talking about: computers, laptops, Wi-Fi, etc., etc. And for us, what has been quite important in terms of the digital learning centers is that we want to start doing a partnership between private schools and inner city schools. Okay, so following the idea that we spoke about in terms of libraries and resources, if you look around the inner city of Johannesburg. You've got St. John's, you've got Rudine, you've got Cares. And one of the things that we're starting to do as we're doing these digital learning centers is to start an interaction between schools that are in the inner city to schools that are private coming together and doing. And from that point is then having schools, private schools, mentoring and providing help to those schools that are within the inner city. That goes back to the whole concept around being a super connector. So ultimately, what's going to happen is that we want to see SGBs working together from those schools that are private to the schools that are inner city. Secondly, we want to talk about resources and resourcing, because to your point, if you look at those schools, the private schools, they've got quite a lot of resources with regards to library and equipment and computers. How do they then support those schools that are in the inner city? So yes, that is quite a huge need. And where we started is the Digital Learning Center. The other one, which is quite important that we started doing, is around sports, where we're starting to, because the inner city schools don't have sports actually. So what we're doing now is to bring this private school to play actually sports with the learners that are within the inner city, so that we can develop that relationship. And from that point, not only are we going to rely on private sector to come in and help those schools, but you can have schools working together in terms of making sure they can identify the gaps and they can work with each other in terms of, making sure that they share those resources.
So far, that whole journey of doing that, how is it going?
It's going very well. As I'm saying to you, 2 weeks ago, we had a sporting activity where we had students from private school coming into the inner city. What is quite interesting is that working with Standard Bank and Maharishi Invincibility Institute, we have actually established a full-size soccer field within the inner city to focus on sports. And that includes a basketball and a netball court. And the great thing about that is that how do we start doing an inner city school tournament within that? And obviously then resourcing those schools that are within the inner city. But then the launch of it was actually bringing schools from outside, private schools, to actually play sport with it. And I think for us, it was great to see the interaction between the learners and obviously the interaction between the officials and the management of the various schools. And that's the relationship that we want to start establishing. The reality is this, is that we as Josie Majosi can only do so much. And we can talk about, the infrastructure that needs to be fixed within the inner city. We can talk about, those schools needing libraries and stuff like that. But we don't have the capacity and the resources to be able to help. So how do we bring people who have those resources and capacity to help each other? And that's why we said, we are a super connector in that regard.
I mean, with all that, maybe one more question before we transition on a few questions on you, Innocent, before we close, is maybe in few words, what is the end game? Josie Majosi, where are you taking it?
I guess for us, we want to be the partner of choice when it comes to urban rejuvenation. And when I say that, is that, right now what we're realizing is that there is a call for us not only to focus on Johannesburg, but to look at other cities and towns across South Africa. And what is important is how we do that. That framework and that strategy in terms of how we expand is quite important, because we are 2.5 years old. We are not quite an organization that has big resources, big structures, and stuff like that. The one thing that we have for us is that we have been able to implement those projects working with government. So for us, it's quite important that as and when and across the country, if there is a need to work on urban regeneration within those, we as Josie Majosi can play an active role, because we have a model that we have developed in Johannesburg that we believe is showing good signs in terms of working, and therefore we want to roll them out to be able to help the broader South Africa, or beyond our borders.
Cool. I mean, I'm sure all this work is giving you a lot of headache. One is, what keeps you up at night? And two is, how many hours of sleep do you do? range?
I mean, for me, what keeps me up at night is inequality.
Okay,
It's inequality,
that's
and
big.
yeah, no, it's just inequality, and you see it very much within the inner city. And I mean, if I give you one of the big issue for me is the fact that because of inequality in South Africa, you find that a lot of people move into Johannesburg because they're looking for a job or they're looking for a way in terms of making a living.
Yeah.
They come from different provinces. But what has been quite revealing is that there are people who move from townships such as Soweto, such as the East Rand, such as the Vaal. They move into the inner city and they stay in some of these dilapidated buildings. Why? Because, and these people are employed, let me say that, and they move in with their families because it's very difficult for them. They're very far from work.
To commute, yeah.
They spend quite a lot of money on commuting with their kids, with their wife, with husbands, etc. Therefore, it makes sense for them financially to move in the inner city and stay there. And therefore, that also leads to them not having quite a lot of choices in terms of the kind of buildings they stay in. And that is because of inequality. And for me, that's one of the things that, I mean, I think as a country, we need to focus on our attention on. And,
housing.
Because, we need to really focus on. Because for me, if we don't solve that problem in terms of making sure that we really take care of our people, then we really are going to struggle as a country, because that leads to many other things in terms of crime, in terms of
social ills. Yeah.
Exactly.
Number of hours sleep.
I love my sleep. I really do. On average, I sleep
to
about...
find that love in hours for us.
No, I'm doing it, and I'm doing it. I mean, on average, I sleep about 7 hours, and I'm a kind of guy. My alarm is always on. I don't trust myself, and that is why I was talking about the fact that I love my sleep. I do, and I find that to your point, work can be very stressful at times, and I find that it helps in terms of making sure that I sleep enough. I really struggle if I don't get enough sleep. So for me, 7 hours is the average I do.
I mean, 3 kids, lived good life. Any looking back, any regrets?
I always think about that, and sometimes it's one of those things that my life panned out as it has, and it's been great because now I'm sitting here. Because sometimes I think about if I haven't done if I have done things differently, I could be somewhere else. So I have no regrets. I mean, let me give it a great example. When I finished high school, I wanted to become an actor.
Okay. I can see that.
Yeah, I wanted to become an actor, and my father told me, "You're not gonna do that. You're not going to do that." And that's
actually. Let me interject, because it's very similar to me, because I grew up into a little bit of creative stuff, movies, directing, and all the drama and all that, and my parents, didn't allow me to take that to another level.
Yeah. So yeah, no, exactly, and yeah. So the point I was trying to make is that, and I was having a conversation with my wife about it, in terms of because sometimes when we're watching TV and movies, I would say, I really wanted to do this. And she said to me, well, think about it this way. If maybe you followed that route, you wouldn't be where you are in terms of your career and what you have achieved. You'd be somewhere different. And do I like where I am right now? Yes, I do like where I am. And that is why, I take those things that we call regrets as things that, what I learned as part of my journey. And yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Parting question. I've got one or so for him.
All right.
And we'll allow him to quiz us back.
I've
Revenge.
got 2 questions for you. The one is, we're just going to backpedal and go back to Josie, my Josie. I wanted to ask, because you spoke about things like the things you wanted to achieve and the things you have achieved. So the one was you wanted to make sure that there is affordable housing within Johannesburg. That was a big thing, especially even before we started the interview itself, we had the conversation. You said that's a big thing that we must solve for. The other thing you said, the street lights, the things you've achieved, the things with the
Solar lights.
the solar lights, the learning centers, the school having the field and all that. So I wanted to know, what does success for the inner city look like within the next 3 to 5 years, like in measurable terms? What does this, since like you've done so much already, but like if you were to like in the next 3 5 years, what does that success look like going forward?
Success is when people think about coming into the inner city of Johannesburg, they don't cringe.
They don't cringe.
That would be success.
Okay, that makes sense.
And let me tell you, it's not only about us as individuals, it's also about investors. Okay? Because to the point around we were talking about around low-cost housing, it's not actually a Josie Majosi version. It's one, obviously, of the city. And we buy into it and we support them in doing that. So for us, it's quite important that we make sure that we work with them. And I think it's a vision that is great. But for us to get property investors to come in and develop that infrastructure, they need to have the confidence to come into the inner city to do that, because they know that, there will be service delivery, there won't be crime, the property won't be vandalized, etc., etc. People who work within the inner city, thinking about the solar streetlights, how we do them is that we target what we call walkable networks, where a lot of people who are coming in and out of the inner city, going to the taxi rank, going into the bus station, they use those sort of what we call walkable networks. And that's where we're focusing in terms of our streetlights, because that's where a lot of crime is happening. And therefore, it is quite important that we make sure that those places are safe. And if people can have the comfort to walk down that street feeling safe, for us, that is important. And obviously, the last point is around cleanliness. So important. Cleanliness is so important. It changes perception and it changes the mood and the environment and how people perceive that particular area. So for us, that is the response. As long as people, when you say come into Johannesburg, they say, yes, I'm coming tomorrow. That for us, that's what we want to do, so based on what we want to do.
That's how you know you've been successful.
That's what
when people don't have any doubts about coming to Joburg. Okay.
So back to you. Maybe last question, I think, from me. What do you do to cool off, to decompress? I mean, you don't just work. Maybe you're acting part-time.
No, it's funny, I usually say when I watch movies, those people who are extras and then they walk past. I say, this is maybe where I can start, just being an extra, walking past. But I've started playing golf.
Oh, okay.
And it has humbled me. And so when I grew up, I used to play quite a lot of sports.
Yeah.
And I was very good, to be honest with you. I was an athlete. I was a brilliant sprinter. And I also did long distances, and I played football, and I'm a good swimmer. So for me, sports was never difficult when I was growing up. I found it to
do anything.
To be quite, intuitive, if I can say that, until I started playing golf. But yeah, I think to the point of relaxation, it really is great, because, I can go out there and you can have 4 bad balls and then you can have 1 brilliant ball that really makes your day. And I think the second thing about playing golf is that when I started playing golf, I was speaking to one of my directors in my other life, Thandi Olaine.
Oh, okay. I know her.
And she plays golf. And I told her, Sister Thandi, I'm going to start playing golf. And she was talking to me about it, that obviously in her family, she's the one who started playing golf. But the thing about golf is that it takes you away from family quite a lot. And she said then she got her husband to join and play golf with her.
Yeah, I know both of them.
And now the kids are playing golf. And the great thing about it is that it has become such a great family activity. And because of the golf course, they spend quite a long time together. And that's what I did, actually. So I play with my wife, golf, and, I find it quite relaxing, frustrating, but it really makes me to really dial off.
What's your handicap?
That's the interesting part, is that because I haven't played for quite a long time, I've only started recent. I got very frustrated trying to work out my handicap. They give you the scorecard and you
Yeah,
start.
you just play.
And the mindset was that when I started doing that, my play was bad because I got frustrated because I was chasing score rather than actually perfecting my
Enjoying,
shots, learning how to use your clubs. Because golf is not only about, just hitting the ball. You need to understand your clubs because different clubs have different ranges in terms of how far you can hit the ball. So you need to understand that if I'm here, what club am I using? You need to be able to think about the gradient of the fairways, the gradient of the... So then I started saying, okay, I'm going to stop concentrating on the scorecard. And what I found actually is that my golf now, patiently so, is improving because my focus is not particularly on getting the par, but actually perfecting how I play shots. So yeah, so far, handicapped. I don't have, actually, it's a great thing. I'm a great golfer because I don't have a handicap.
That's funny. With
different logic. It's like, I'm a great footballer because I don't have goals.
Off the clock.
Yeah, off the clock. This is the moment that most of our guests enjoy a lot, to ask us some questions because they feel like they've been in a confession box. Some of them feel like they've been relaxing, but over to you. Any questions?
This has been good. I mean, I just hoping that you would have told me this, or I would have come with like 10 questions before the interview. But I think what for me, and it's something I've been thinking about recently, actually, is because, sorry, I'm going to take a long, but I'm just trying to get context around my question, is that, when we used to grow up in the townships, there were quite a lot of families that had businesses.
Family business.
And the sad part about it is that, once the dad passes away or something like that, those business collapse. They don't go anywhere. Yeah. And so one of the things that when you guys were telling me that this is a business that you guys are running as a family, my question is, what is the big plan with regards to what you guys are doing here? Are you looking to grow this into a media house? Or what is the big plan in terms of the business that you guys are running?
So, I'll go first because this is, by the way, frequently asked question by our guests every week. I think the end game is obviously to make this very educational, but also a place where CEOs like you can sit back and chill and share personal life stories that people can learn from and grow from that. Um, I think we are already turning that into a media house. We're in our third year. I think we're getting better and better. You've seen the social media manager, the videographer, the whole team. Before there wasn't that team to be able to manage that content. We just done over 80 CEO interviews over the period. And there's just so much content to create that media house in terms of book. We've seen a lot of trends with as heavily weighted on work-life balance of CEOs, longevity, because sometimes in life you can have a good life or live long. Lifespan versus health span. Live until 90, but the last 20 years you're like crawling. We're trying to really, really spotlight that and promote that. Out of that, we've been doing in-person events at a business school, GIPS, where I'm a fellow, where we bring in, for instance, topic on mental wellness in leadership or trifecta of wellness, looking at the physical wellness of leaders like yourself. You look like you're in good condition, you're eating well, you're strong. Financial wellness of leaders, and also mental wellness in terms of, if you got a good health span living until 80, you're able to, play golf until your last day type of a thing. So, um, in a long way, I think that's the vision. Maybe my favorite son would like to summarize that.
I'll just say everything he said, as well as being a successful podcast. So, yes.
And how do you deal with the hierarchy, with how it, because you are the dad, usually when you're working with your dad, or when you're doing something with your dad is the one who says, this is how we do things around here, and I'm the big boss. And so for you, how's that? Because
It doesn't run. It doesn't run. It doesn't. I'm just being honest because, first of all, I'm using his words. He said to me, we're business partners in this. So there's no, you're still my dad, but there's no, you're the dad here. So it's very much, I can't separate him like business partner and dad because it's the same person and everything. So in a way, it's like, okay, I know I'm speaking to my dad, but also at the same time, it's like, okay, but this is what we're discussing, and both of us basically have basically the same stake in this whole thing. We basically have the similar say in this whole thing. So yeah, we're also able to have that conversation. It doesn't get in the way as much as people might think it would. And I think that's also just the relationship me and my dad already have, as well as him knowing me and me knowing him. It's like he said earlier, I'm very different from my sister. I think if you started this with my sister, that hierarchy thing might be there more because my sister's more diplomatic and more go with the flow, whereas I'm very much, I'll say what I want to say. I won't be disrespectful about it or whatever about it, but I'm still going to say what I want to say and be like, this is where I stand with this whole thing. So, yeah, I don't let the whole hierarchy thing get in the way per se. I just look at it from for how it is, as well as you said it yourself, we're business partners.
So how do you then separate business life and personal life? Do you have an opportunity when you are at home over the weekend to separate? You were asking me about relaxing,
Yeah.
and I don't know whether when you are sitting at home having a bra and then you have to talk business, or you are able to, even though we are together at home, be able to.
So maybe let me preface the answer to that question a bit because I think it's very important. I think I'm the coolest dad, in the sense that I don't bring hierarchy in that, and I'm also think I'm also young at heart. I relate very well to young people. Sometimes they're not ready for me, but I do relate very well with them and connect, and I think this helps. To answer your question in terms of saying where do we draw the line at home, I think the fact that my wife, his mother, has got no interest into social media and this stuff. We try to bring it in, but there's a limit in the way she wants to do it, and she's happy for us to do this. Sometimes I think she's jealous, but she's happy for us, which I think helps for us to separate and draw the line.
Yeah.
When we all together, we hardly talk about this. So you won't find this sitting on a dinner table or lunch table or some other places all the time, which I think helps. And also, I think this was his idea as well, which I took it and polished it and make it more workable because of a project that I was doing at work. When I was at Medtronic, CEO of Medtronic, I was running CEO breakfast where I bring CEOs like you to talk about three things: how you made it to the corner office, Josie, my Josie, your business, and the industry or sector that you are in. Three things as a case study for employees, 1,000 employees that we had. And out of that, we're able to, when we brainstorm, bring off the clock as a kind of a project or initiative for us. So Yeah, it's a very unusual relationship. I'm not big on hierarchy, and you know, surprisingly, people look at me, they get scared, but when they get to know me, they love me because like let's spend more time. You cool, type of a thing. So so that's a long answer to your question.
No, fantastic.
I see you like it.
No, I like it. I like it. I like it. I mean, it's quite good. And I think because that in itself is about this narrative between a relationship between a father and their children, as we we're talking about. Sometimes fathers can be.
And I mean, I think just like you, what you said earlier, I mean, I come from a big family. I didn't like the way my father raised and approached certain things. It was good then, and unlike you, I was very deliberate about how I wanted to raise my kids, and I always say I had worked on a strategy. Even though you don't have experience, but you have an idea, you just fix it along the way as you go. And I think my daughter's challenging me with that. And so, like, when I reminded her, actually, I'll send you a shot where I was telling her about when that strategy was working. I think it was at the time when she was at crossroads, confused about what she want to do. She wanted to be this um, mining engineer, helmet, boots, everything, which I think on paper at school, telling your colleagues it looks sexy and promising, but reality, so we did homework and she realized that, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. And I guess that's the homework that is important.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than saying no. You see?
Yeah, so that's my approach.
Yeah,
It's more engaging dealing with the kids as opposed to instruct them. You will do this without explaining it. So for her to change her mind, she had to go to engineering school in University of Pretoria, spend 2 weeks and go into the mine and see it, and made her own decision to say, my choice was very kind of not real.
Yeah. And finally, from my side, how did you meet your wife? The laughter is coming from the other side of the table. So this is going to be a very interesting response.
No, it's I've actually told them already how we met because I'm very proud of how I met my wife. It was not arranged. I found her myself.
Why are you sounding guilty?
No, I'm not sounding guilty. I'm just giving you the background. So, and because you're the CEO of Josie My Josie, you can relate because I actually met my wife in Carlton Center. We didn't go to the same school. She came from Dlamini in Soweto. I was living in Deep Kloof, Ghost Town, Zone 3. And I saw her at the CNA. She was doing her first year. I was doing my first year or second year. I can't remember. And I approached her to buy her ice cream, and we connected. The rest is, as they say, history.
Yeah, no, good one. I once saw something that says, "What would life be without ice cream?"
Yeah, there's nothing that ice cream can fix.
Yeah, so for you. Yeah, no, that's it from my side.
Yeah.
And
okay, thank you very much for making the time. Really enjoyed talking to you. I told you this. You'll enjoy this.